backlog of forward transactions which were contractual in nature and which had already been, as I say, contracted before we came in. Now, it was clear to us that it was very important in the interest of the credibility of the central bank, which at that point in time was very much in question, that we were able to satisfy and take care of these forwards. And if you recall, during the Senate hearings, I had actually made reference to this and said that this would be a priority to ensure that we take care of these forwards within the resource constraints we had and as soon as we could. And that was why, on a regular basis, I tried to address the issue, address the press, and be transparent as possible to allow Nigerians to know exactly where we stood and what we were doing. And you recall that during that period, we settled, a certain tranche, and then we got wind of the fact that, well, there were a number of transactions which, quite frankly, had some issues with respect to the genuineness of them. So we said, well, in that case, the best thing may be to let us get a well-reputed organization that can do a proper forensic of the transactions that are so defined as forward contracted transactions. And that was how we came across and brought in Deloitte Management Consultants, who took time, and this really did take months. This is not something that happened overnight, and a lot of this work was going on and people didn't know. But they took months painstakingly to go through all the documents, and to ensure that, they had a report which we could rely on. In the course of that, of course, we determined that a number of these transactions did not qualify, and I've said this before. In some cases, you had some requests which, you actually had some allocations that were made in millions of dollars, which were never requested for. You also had some where they had no naira, and they were also allocated, huge sums of foreign exchange, and the list goes on. And it was for that reason that we refused to validate those particular transactions. We refused to validate them because, apart from the fact that documentation was not satisfactory, in many cases, they were outright illegal. And the law enforcement agencies, of course, are now looking into those transactions that are, as far as we're concerned, not valid to be paid. I would emphasize that if there's any information to the contrary, we would in due course consider that. But as at today, that is exactly where it stands, and the law enforcement agencies are taking a very, very hard look at those transactions. Other transactions we have settled, and as at today, as I have said before, I will say it again, that the valid transactions, as far as the Central Bank of Nigeria is concerned, have been taken care of. We are also not mindful of the fact that there just may be some stakeholders who, over a period of time, may have had backlogs in one form or the other. We're not unmindful that that could be the case. That some of those may go back, years, a long period of time. We've done what we can to make the market as open and transparent and liquid as possible. So those particular stakeholders are free to access those markets and take care of their backlogs. Okay, but we have met the verified backlogs of contractual obligations as we deem them forward transactions.
Okay, good afternoon, Governor Onyenwachukwu from Business Day. Sure. Thank you so much for taking time to explain the issues around this FX backlog, which is the question I really wanted to ask. But quickly, is it? Can we get a sense of how much is still ineligible? They have not cleared.
Sure.
That these stakeholders are claiming.
Sure.
And can we also understand what makes these claims ineligible?
Sorry, say that again.
What makes those claims ineligible?
Okay. Yeah, sure. I think the figure is about 2.4, I beg your pardon, 2.4 billion ineligible. 2.4 billion ineligible. Okay, and as I said, there have been several cases, quite frankly, that go from documentation, Form M, no Form M available, or, as I mentioned earlier, cases where allocations were made and no requests were asked for, or cases where allocations were made and no Naira was available. So, the list goes on. So that's a good example of some of the infractions that we noted.
Good afternoon, Governor. My name is Isa Abdulwahab from New Telegraph newspapers. CBN has lifted forex restriction on dairy product. Did the bank consider the impact of its action on the local market?
Thank you very much. Now, again, this is a situation where, as far as the central bank is concerned, we observed that it is important that our operations are as open and transparent as possible. Because it is this lack of transparency that drives people away from the market. Where the market feels that there's something that isn't quite right, or there are distortions, there's a tendency for them to hold back. And one of our objectives, as I have said a number of times, is to ensure that we regulate the market in such a way that it is open and transparent. We observed that in this particular case, only 6 companies are allowed to bring in dairy products and its milk products and its derivatives. Only 6. And we believe that this is oligopolistic at best. And that in any case, we should not constrain anybody that wants to come to the foreign exchange market to purchase foreign exchange from doing so. We do not believe we should constrain them from doing so. It's not our responsibility, it's not our job to do that. We should leave the market open, transparent, and let those who are in a position to deal in a particular area do so. At least, certainly, we will not ban them from the foreign exchange. We will not ban them from the foreign exchange market. We will not. And certainly, we will not restrict that market to just 6 players. We will not do so.
Good afternoon, Governor and members of the MPC. I'm Nancy Naji. Governor, I want to ask a question following up from the question I asked on Binance last month, because it's been a long 1 month from the time you addressed us here. So my question is really around the status of Binance and now in the country, which is really unclear, as very unfortunately one of its executives escaped custody just a few days ago, while another remains detained with the Office of the National Security Advisor amidst allegations. You mentioned it here last month, about $26 billion flow from that same organization. So the allegations and accusations of Binance negatively, manipulating the Naira. And this has really led, at least from what I've seen in the last few days, it has led to a sense of ambiguity, as well as a perceived absence of a unified approach from the federal government regarding the matter. My question to you really is around what is the CBN stance on these ongoing developments. I had the FIRS chair, was it yesterday or so, Zach Adedije, talk about, of course, it will not hamper tax evasion issues and all of that. So I would really like to know what the CBN stance is on that. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you very much. Again, a very good question, and thank you for that. And I'll be surprised if it didn't come up, given what has been going on. Well, look, first and foremost, let me clarify to say that the central bank does have, at least we consider ourselves as having the wherewithal to collaborate with other agencies of government. And that is a very important function for us. And where we see we can work with other arms of government, we will do so. And I must say that, and this perhaps should touch on what you just said about a month ago. A month ago, we actually did have collaboration with law enforcement agencies, EFCC, the SEC, and other regulatory bodies as well. And I think what came out of that, quite frankly, has work in progress, but very, very, very positive, as far as I can see. Very positive. Office of the National Security Advisor. So we've been sharing information together. However, in this particular case, the responsibility for regulating cryptocurrency is not our own. It isn't ours. It is strictly that of the Security and Exchange Commission. Okay, that's not our responsibility. And of course, the issue of people, who have been held in, and what we've already in the press. Again, that's strictly speaking the Office of the National Security Advisor. That's not within the purview of the central bank. So, unfortunately, there's nothing to report to you, to tell you, but just to clarify that that is really the relationship that the central bank has on this matter.
We have some questions from some media organizations from Lagos. One is from Uche Usim of the Sun newspapers. Permit me, Mr. Governor, to ask the question on his behalf. He said, recently the CBN donated 2.15 million sacks of fertilizer to the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security for distribution to farmers. Does this signify a return to developmental finance intervention? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Another question that I know has dogged the minds of so many. And the question is, does this suggest a return to developmental interventions? And the answer is no, it doesn't. And let me explain why it doesn't. Because we have been consistent in saying that we will withdraw from direct interventions. We have been consistent in saying so. We have also been consistent in saying that we will work with those who we believe have the capacity to successfully intervene in whatever manner they can. And that, by the way, includes even capacity building. It's not, strictly speaking, direct funding or anything like that. It isn't. It extends to a whole host of different areas. So where we see that capacity is there, the central bank would be happy to partner. And that goes similar to what one had just said about the collaboration that we have had with regulatory authorities and also law enforcement authorities. But let's face this particular issue. Now, The fertilizer that was given out was the residue of an intervention that had been done before we came into office. It was not something that was done directly by us. And the options were either to leave them there to rot away or to give them to those that we believed had the capacity to distribute. And that is exactly what we did with the handing over to the Ministry of Agriculture. In actual fact, the way I see it is that we've taken those particular merchandise and put it where it rightly belongs.
Thank you, sir. I have another question from Babajide Komolafe of Vanguard. He said, the recent appreciation of the Naira against other major global currencies is certainly welcome news. What steps is the CBN taking to ensure that this positive momentum continues? Some suggest that the forex interventions are distorting the market. Is there validity to this claim? And how does the CBN ensure that the exchange rate remains flexible?
So many questions in one. Well, I think first and foremost, is something that I tend to talk about a lot at when I speak on foreign exchange at public fora like this, and that is the issue of distortions. The issue of distortions. And just to say that we were painstaking in ensuring that we removed as many of the distortions that proved in the way of the rates finding their right level for price discovery. Because for price discovery to happen, certain fundamentals or certain attributes need to be in place. And you would recall that there's been a whole myriad of different circulars that have come out over a period of time which were designed to remove those distortions such that the market became a lot freer and the concept of willing buyer and willing seller became something that was a lot easier to establish. And therefore, by that, you would have the price discovery, the appropriate price discovery. Now, of course, in all this is the importance of liquidity, okay? Because try as you may, if there's not enough liquidity going in and out of the market, then obviously that in itself can pose a problem. The central bank, I would say, looking to the future at some point in time, would expect to have a situation where interventions from the central bank into the market will be minimal to non-existent. But where we see the need to have liquidity pumped in to ensure liquidity in the market and that the market is boisterous and stakeholders can come in and go out, we will do so. The idea is by no means to establish any price, but at least to catalyze the demand and supply equation in such a way that the market gets its own confidence, and as I said, price discovery is established, and people get used to that. And once that becomes a regular occurrence, then we expect that we'll find that the need for central bank to come in and will be significantly reduced to eliminated. The market should really run on its own at some point in time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Governor. Another question just dropped from Nume Ekege of This Day Newspapers. And he said, Mr. Governor, sir, this is a very short question. We can see the work that you and your team are doing. But how do we avoid rising interest rates from strangulating economic growth?
Yeah, it's a short question, but unfortunately, my response can't be as short as that, to be honest. But really, on a serious note, to say that we are not unmindful of the impact that these increases in interest rates are having. We are not unmindful of it. We are very, very, very mindful. And in actual fact, if you look at it, why are we doing this? Because we've said our main objective is to manage inflation. And we believe that with increased interest rates, we have a situation where the foreign exchange market becomes a lot more lively. We've had relative shortages in foreign exchange over the recent past. We're now seeing more activity in the foreign exchange market, which in turn is reducing the exchange rate and is also reducing costs. Okay, so it's not a one-sided affair that the increase in interest rates is strangulating the economy. While it may have those tendencies on one side, with the foreign exchange rate coming down, that also helps to moderate the overall. And as I had said earlier, we would expect that this would not be too long drawn, at least I would hope so, that it would not be too long drawn. We are getting towards a situation where on the exchange rate it is moderating, and we expect it to continue to moderate. And then it finds a level which, quite frankly, very, very important, is sustainable. That's very, very, very important. A level that is sustainable, which obviously will involve huge collaboration with the fiscal side, because a lot of that cannot just rely on the monetary side alone. So whatever we see on the interest rate side, which is being used to help to moderate prices, buys us time to ensure that the fiscal side, is able to do all the things that it is already doing and ensures for a more sustainable economy where the need to depend too much on hiking interest rates is considerably reduced. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Governor, sir. That